Welcome to the nightcap. The nightcap we have going on. Me, I'm Coach Schumann. I'm here with Coach DePascal for our nightcap version of the Prospect Podcast, which means we got to speak a little bit like softer. You know what I mean, like late night radio. You know what I mean. Um, we have our part two with our special guest, Coach Quesenberry. We're excited to talk to him and really dive into some more of the nitty gritty details on things with respect to the speed development, development, and kind of his kind of programming from that standpoint. Those of you who may have missed round one, we really kind of dived into his overall philosophy, the things that he was doing, starting to do with the program, and kind of stuff he really learned, um, along the way over the years. But today we want to kind of get a little bit more into the weeds if we can, on some of the stuff. And he was so great to want to do it again. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's I think we're doing something right. Okay.
Yeah.
we want to do a round two. So it's great having Coach Q back. Coach, welcome back to the podcast.
Appreciate it, guys. Glad to be back. And I mean, I took ownership for the first time. We had some of the typical technical difficulties in a school building. So I felt like we were just scratching the surface. So happy to come back.
Absolutely, and we had really started to dive in, on some of the things that we were doing. But I want to kind of like just do like a quick uh, history recap here. So if you could kind of go into, you don't have to go into like the history of they can watch part one if to
Right.
hear all that kind of stuff. But really like the building of your programming, and then we could kind of start to dive into the weeds of there. So how you really got to the point where your programming is, what your programming is today, and what kind of the big emphasis is, and then we can really start to dive into the weeds on that.
Right. So, like we talked about last time, I come from the background of coaching football first and foremost. And then I was always attracted or enjoyed the training aspect. And when I got out of high school coaching in 2015, I started more into the strength and conditioning world. And when I came back to Ravenwood in 2021, that's when I started to, dive into the feed the cats philosophy. And that started to really change and mold and how we evolved to where we are today with a priority of speed, but it's still not the majority, right? It
Right.
doesn't take, that much time. You're talking 2 days a week in season, up to 3 days a week off season. So it was just, but also with that, as we talked a little bit about in part one, it's still, everything ties into how that works with high-low days, with the central nervous system and recovery days. So even though I say it's a priority, not the majority, it still helps mold our philosophy and our programming planning based off of that philosophy.
No doubt about it. Talk about the CNS system and what the things that you're trying to really kind of make sure that you hone in on to get the level of performance that you want, that we don't drain the CNS system. Maybe you could give a little background on that too, just for some people who may not understand it the way that we do.
Right. Yeah.
We start saying CNS and like
Yeah.
people might be listening, say, "What the heck are these guys talking about?" So, um, but talk a little bit about that and the importance of it in the development and the training and performance.
Right. So if you think about the most taxing thing we can do to our central nervous system is maximal sprinting. So, that's on one end. And if you think of a spectrum, the opposite end would be doing, like simple bicep curls, your isolation type exercise. So then you have everything along that, curve, if you want to call it, or linear graph. You have your Olympic lifts, your high level plyometrics are going to be down near the sprinting as well. In that 60% range will be your deadlifts, your squats, your bench press even would fall down probably 30-40%. So we try to, when we program, you can have that upper body day following a high central nervous system day, obviously. So if we're going to sprint, we're usually going to do our heavier lower body lift on the same day, right? So we're already high, and then have a low day where it's more upper body focus. If it's things on the field, it's going to be things that aren't touching max velocity. Obviously, it can be, short change of direction, more skill based game speed stuff like Tony Villani puts out there that
Right.
we could put in on those days between. Now, some people run and those kind of things we don't and we can get into the conditioning part. Are you guys there? Oh, there
Yep.
you go.
Yep.
Yeah,
The,
you
the
all
conditioning
went
part.
out
Yeah.
on me there, so I don't know where I got cut off. If
You
you
said
could
the
hear me,
conditioning part, the conditioning,
what was that?
the conditioning part. You were saying that was the
Oh
last one.
yeah, I was saying, some people will use tempo runs
Right.
or sub-maximal work in between, and we've people want to argue this obviously on X and whatever, but our guys have no issues that we train the max speed, we train explosiveness, power, strength. We do no traditional conditioning drills at all. We let the sport train the sport, if you will, right? The way we practice, and again, back to like we talked in part one, that's the collaboration you have to have with the head coach, the
Right.
coordinators, the position coaches. That if it's a high day, it's a high day, it's a performance day, and then a low day is not, which we're able to track. They can't hide it because we wear the catapult vectors. So we get the GPS numbers so we know where we are. And we've not had, any conditioning issues in the last 3 years that we've run this type of program.
I wonder if so what from a metric standpoint for you are the most important things when constructing the frameworks of your program for each athlete? Like, what are the metrics that you need to have? The handful of metrics that you need to have on a fairly regular basis, and that enable you to back off, move forward, change exercise, change what you're doing a little bit from a development standpoint and training standpoint.
Sorry, I'm losing you again there.
Oh, I was saying, what are
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
the metrics that you use to really kind of construct your frameworks of your program?
In regards to the training with practice, which one, where are you talking?
Yeah. So with respect to, like, so you come off from a practice, what numbers do you need to have then from them, the weight room or the speed development aspect, and then what numbers are you looking at on a weekly basis? Let's say if you're doing speed all the way through, what are some of the
Yeah.
numbers that you're looking at to see, like, are we progressing or are we not?
Right. So obviously we track max speed, right? So we either
Okay.
do that via GPS peak velocity that they can hit on their GPS or catapult, or via fly tens. And then that's obviously an average velocity. So we get every guy's max speed. And then when we get to end season, a lot of people say don't go under 90% or try to touch at least 90% each week. We try to keep it at 95, right? So and then we've been, blessed or fortunate, or what we do is work and our guys get faster. So then we got to change that number. I gave
Right.
the example, our quarterback, we have the two quarterback system, two Division I quarterbacks for the last 2 years. And one of them, the BC commit, just in week 9, his PR peak velocity was 22.5. He hit 22.8. So that's an example of someone getting fat. And we got a lot of guys like that, especially the guys that are in, maybe the low 20s. They'll get up to 21, or maybe they'll go from 20.2 to 20.7. And then all we're looking at each week is, are they within that 95%? If they dip down to like 93, we do our research with them. It might have been they, had a late night or they weren't feeling well. because it's got to be, if they're not sick, they're either overtrained or under recovered, right?
Right.
And we talked a lot in part one that it's their part too. It's not only what we can only control what we control, but they control if they're getting good night's sleep, if they're eating well. But there's lots of stressors in these kids' lives, with school and academics. Could be girlfriend, could be
Go ahead.
family issues at home. So whatever it may be. So a lot of times when there's a dip in a number, you do a little investigating. And we do the same. We track our broad jumps. We use a jump mat or whatever type of jump metric you want to use. And it's the same type thing. You're
Right.
looking for them to maintain at minimum and improve where we can. As far as strength goes, we never really chase numbers. Our guys are strong. We want to be strong, but we use the VBT, which really helps auto regulate in season. So then it's more of, we're trying to reach that bar speed, and then guys that are feeling good are going to be able to push more weight at that speed. And days where they're not, well, the load will be a little bit lighter, but they're still working in the, parameters we give them.
Right. And so from a bar speed, so you're tracking the velocity that bar is moving relative to what the weight that they have. So like there's a certain number you're looking at. What is the number that you want to have them at for the velocity of the bar speed? And when can they move up, or
Right.
if I'm sure what number are you looking to hit?
Well, it just depends. It's just like if you do percentage base or West Side, if you have like max
Right.
effort dynamic days, obviously if it's a heavy day, we're going to get that thing in season. We try not to go too much under zero point 0.5 meters per second. We may let them go down to 0.4 or 3.5, especially some younger guys. Again, it just depends where they are from a readiness standpoint. We may be in the 0.75 to 1.0, or we may put it down to 7.5 to 8.5 on the work sets. And then that's what their average is. If we're at 0.75 and they hit 0.78 and 0.72, well, they still average 0.75, right?
Right.
If they're 10 over, we have charts where they add 5 pounds or add 10 pounds, or if they're below it, take 5 or 10 off. So like I said, it pretty much auto regulates. But a lot of times, and I'm sure a lot of people that use VBT know this, some guys, when you're doing your build up sets or prep sets, they end up moving the heavier weight faster than they did on the build up sets, which is kind of crazy. So sometimes you have to give them that, or we'll say, okay, you got another set to try.
Right.
If you only have 2 or 3 work sets, well, then you don't have that many opportunities. But it seems to always work itself out. And the more you use it, they get dialed in with it.
Yeah, I find that it's amazing the numbers that you're able to see. Like, it's very clear. Like at certain weights, the speed starts to
Right.
to to drop, and that gives you a good indicator of depending on where you want it to be. Is there a number that you think that correlates then to speed on the field depending on the exercise? So like I don't know, like trap bar deadlift or things like that. Are there exercises that you look for numbers on that then you think are translating on the field from a speed standpoint?
Well, I don't know if it's a set number, but movement wise, like you're talking about, yes. I mean, the hex bars deadlift's always very common with speed and track
Right.
athletes, athletes in general, because it's a pretty easy one to coach. I think the box squat's another one. And all those lifts, you're always saying, hey, force in the ground, move it fast. And that goes back to the VBT. When we switch to that, I think really drives the intent, because our guys would move weight. You can tell them to move it fast, but when you have a number telling you if you're moving it fast or not, just like when we're out running, you do a sprint. Well, if you're not timing it, record, rank, and publishing it, the intent's not going to be the same. So I think that works the same in the weight room as far as that goes. As far as people get into, if you squat 2 times your body weight or 2.5 times, I haven't really seen that matter as much.
Right.
I know Cody Hughes had a great presentation on VBT that he put out, and maybe it was someone at his school or someone he worked with. A lineman was a 4 or 5 star recruit by a lot of top SEC programs. and his raw bench was like 290 pounds, which is not a lot for a big lineman, right?
Right.
Prospect. But when you use the VBT and the weight, the speed he could move submaximal weight, it calculated out as if he was 300. I don't know, 35 or 65
Wow.
pound bencher, so he was coming out of his stance quick, he's shooting his hands fast. So he had that more explosive power that was measured by the VBT more than just because it is. You'll get those guys that are weight room warriors and they're not very good football players.
Right.
And then you'll have the guys that struggle in the weight room from a strength, but they're a dog on the field. Or they're
Right.
athletic and they can play. So it's, we really keep strength pretty general. I think that's what helps keep the athletes robust and healthy. And that's why I'm big on patterns. Make sure we're hinging, squatting, lunging. We're doing bilateral, unilateral. We push, pull, vertical, horizontal, and same thing with the bi and unilateral. That we just want them to be, moving different planes and just train them like athletes. Like they're not going to put a bench press on the 50-yard line and have a contest to decide the game, or a squat rack. And whenever they do that, then maybe we'll have a powerlifting mentality, but that hasn't
Right.
happened yet,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The ability to move the bar combined with the speed that you can move your body as far as running or whatever position movement it is really that force you're generating, right? So that becomes the force. So guys that are able to move fast,
right?
That generates more force than someone who can lift a lot but move slowly through the process. And obviously there's some meaning of the minds, like that becomes a maximal, fast and strong, right?
Right.
But there's
Yeah.
there's an intersection there that makes it the best it could be for that you would like optimally, I guess. But
Right.
but along that plane, that's where you start to say, okay, this guy's a better, this is where an athlete who might not bench quite as much, but he's moving the bar fast, he's able to move his body fast, and I was generating X amount of force on the field. Is that track too? Is that I don't know if the GPS systems track any of that kind of stuff, or
track what?
Like force generated on the field at all? Like, so is that something that's able to be tracked at all?
Well, you have like your max acceleration, decelerations. Like Catapult has a player load that has, one of those big complicated formulas that pretty much takes like your distance at high speeds, or how many times you're those, again, it'll calculate, takes one of those formulas of everything your physical exertion, if you will. And so we follow that too. Like high player load in practice, we get in the upper threes, low 400s. But then in a game, it can be anywhere from upper 600s to low 800s. And then so on a low day, obviously we want to try to keep those under 250, even 200. But then we also use but the total yardage can be deceiving too. You really need to look at speeds at certain, maybe a quarter of a mile walk from the field house, then walking or all.
Right.
It all factors.
Very taxing,
Right.
So the player load and stuff would show more on that. Sorry.
No, I think
like
that's
this past game, we had a couple of receivers and DBs that get in the 13,000 yard range, which is over 6 miles. So on a high practice, we try to keep them in the no more than the 6,000 yard range. Some may get to that 6,800, or some just at 59. And then on a low day, they're typically under 3,500 yards. And that's counting just everything.
Okay.
So
that
typically
makes sense.
Monday, Wednesday would be the days. Yeah, they get the higher. Tuesday's low, Thursday's a walkthrough.